Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's artist guest is Shannon Woodloe. Shannon is a local photographer and a digital storyteller out of Wilmington, Delaware. She is a recipient of the 2019 Delaware Division of the Arts Fellow. Woodloe is also a teaching artist. Shannon, welcome. We are so excited and glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So Shannon, I'm gonna, as I do in all of the interviews, I'm gonna jump right into the session. Your artwork confronts the viewer, and I feel like a lot of your work questions the place of like one's place in the narrative. I feel like you all like your work presents questions, like your work presents a thought process of the viewer. What's your process for creating a visual narrative, specifically to Black culture, and if so, to nonconformity?
Um, I think my process always starts as a question. I spend a lot of time just in general questioning my own self in the spaces that I occupy, in my life in general. And just experiences that my peers have. And so I think it always starts as a question. So, like with this, um, it kind of I knew I wanted to respond to something, but I didn't know what yet. I knew that hair and conformity and having natural hair or not it's always been a hot topic as a Black woman. But where stand in that is that I feel like every Black woman should wear their hair the way they feel comfortable. Um, but with my own experience in conforming and trying to make my hair straight, um, I have my own experience with it and why I chose to be natural. But I think for this project, for me there was a visual inspiration. First was there's always a question around Black hair and how it looks and the coils that are within it and the different colors, the hues, the textures, and that are all within it. And I think that's one question that I wanted to share or allow viewers to see up close. And then the other question was, what does someone's hair really tell about them? Um, and their skill level and what they can do and so those two questions and wanting to really highlight just the hair and not the people necessarily behind the hair. And since this was specifically speaking of within the workplace, so those two questions, like what about hair can you tell just from looking at it, and then what about someone's position or career or education level can you tell um, just from viewing their hair. So I guess that answers your question.
Okay, so I think the question is, what are some vulnerabilities that you as an artist bring to your work? You're behind the camera and you are able to capture, like you're behind the lens. How does that affect your storytelling and your narrative? You create a narrative of Black culture, like Black culture, women in a contemporary like approach, like we're in a contemporary setting and not in a historical setting.
Right. Right. Okay. So for this, because I shot all of this within the past 2 months, 2 or 3 months, um, having to present it to my models, that was one, I would say, insecurity I had to overcome. And because it was my idea, I had to get them to buy into this and pose for me and give me their time, all behind this idea I had. So they were really, a lot of the times that everybody, my models, they thank me for asking them to participate, but I always thank them for their participation, because I'm like, if you said no, like I wouldn't have a project, so I that's always that's my first audience. My models are always my first audience. So that's one insecurity that I had to overcome. And then the other, I would say, I guess I have three answers to this question. So the other part is the models and their own insecurities, which is something that I dealt with my last project, 401, which was an exploration of the Black female body, and her, taking ownership of that. And with this, it's hair. And even with my male model, being conscious of the way his hair laid or looked, or it was still a thing. So it's like, even though we have this natural hair, like everyone was very particular about how their hair looked. And so I think when people assume that there's an unkemptness to natural hair, this for me proved that. So I had to deal with that in a way that made them comfortable and made sure like different spots weren't showing, and it looked good for them to feel comfortable in me sharing it. So that was another insecurity. And the other, I think there are two quotes. So it's interesting that you said historical and contemporary. That kind of I played with or toyed with the ideas of in this. And one is a Malcolm X quote, and it's from the 1960s, and it says, "Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair?" Um, and in response to that, I have a contemporary quote from my author, who has a book, who it will be released, I think it's July 2021, July this year. But she has a quote that says, "As a child, I wondered why all my white classmates had hair that cascaded like cartoon characters." And so for me, that is a historical context of that question, but it responded to in a very contemporary way that also touches on the history of cartoons and cartoons up until this day, and why I think representation, matters so much. So um, that was the other insecurity that I had to deal with, was that making sure that my audience, whoever it was, whether they were familiar or not familiar, the importance of representing Black hair in all forms, from in the workplace all the way to cartoons, kind of thing.
That was giving me life, like all life right there. That answer, I really enjoy that answer. And just a follow up, are your models? Your models are they like models, or are they like real? Like, I mean, everyone's a real person, right? But are they? Is it like someone like in like like in their true workplace environment, or like your models are like people who are just going about and living like going about their lives, and you're able to follow them and capture them? Or are they like higher models that like present themselves this way for a profession?
No, some are close friends, some are acquaintances through other photography projects, but they are all just real people. I am really about, with the digital storyteller role, I'm really about capturing the rawness and the true essence of people, and where they are. And I think that in of itself can tell a lot of a story. If you look at hands, and a well manicured hand versus a hand that's scruffy, like those are that realness, I think, is captured and can tell a story. So my models are always never, this isn't high fashion, so I don't need high fashion models, but they're just people that I've run across or know, and they are gracious enough to trust me and sit in front of my camera. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
uh thinking about the show, conversations, like these conversations of uh nonconformity, specifically to hair, and the passing of the Crown Act. Whoop, whoop. Delaware, yes. what what is your vision? What would you like for the viewers to take away from, someone that comes in, and there are so many different people who will view the show? What are some of the things that you would like for your viewers to take away from the show?
um I think I really just want the viewer to question their own biases, For one, if they have any, based on the hair that they see, the job titles of the people, and the job titles are these people actual, they're their actual job titles, and um, just thinking about when you um, interact or come across someone with that same hairstyle now in any setting, check your bias, for those people that have biases, and those people that don't or feel like they're just curious. Explore the hair. You're not supposed to touch a Black person's hair. You don't want to feel how you, unless you ask, of course, or but it's sometimes it's just the texture that's a question. And the reason why I made the print so large, is so that the viewer can take a moment and just look at the texture and look at the differences in texture, um, of the different hair types, the different people that are there. Look at their skin colors, figure out what can you tell about them. Can you tell how old they are? Can you guess at that? Because I I know a lot of times, well, I know from the images that I have, and just even some of the job titles, it's something that the age is not even something that you may even be able to guess.
It's a reflective question, and I've been thinking about this for some time. Who teaches? I mean, and I feel like, like we all learned this in like elementary school. It was like who teaches the other person not to touch your hair? Like
Yeah.
where's this in the lesson? Like, I feel like as a person, I feel like as a Black woman, like I'm not going to touch anyone else's hair because in respect and in return, I wouldn't expect for anyone to touch my hair. Like I can't understand how someone would think that they have the privilege and the audacity and the nerve to be able to be like, I'm just going to touch this person's hair.
I
Just
think
gonna-
it's touch in general. We don't touch unless it's family or something like that. Like, we don't just go up and touch people. Generally, I know for me, it's not something I was raised like. You give people their space. That's their personal space, and so I just think it. Honestly, I think it's a cultural thing, and I think um, that because it's a cultural thing, it's something that we widely acknowledge. When other people interact with our culture, they should also acknowledge it. Just like if you went to a Chinese or an Asian country, and they had certain customs about removing your shoes or this and that at the dinner, like it's a cultural thing, and it should be respected just as any other cultural, cultural thing should be.
And I have one more question before I get into like the narrative. What's the role of historic content and research within your practice?
Um, it's a huge part. Whether it's um, so previously, I guess a lot of my work that I've is literary based, and so it's influenced by literature. The first project that I did along that was the one that I won the 2019 fellowship with the Delaware Division of Arts for, and it was based on Lorraine Hansberry play, in a book that was published, I forget, in the 1940s, but it was Young to be Young, Gifted, and Black. And then within there was a short narrative. So even with that, I think I had to do research because I don't want to exploit anything. I don't want to exploit it. I don't want to make it seem hokey. I don't want to, like, I really just, there was a story in there, and there were people as I was reading the story that I knew that I was picturing. And it's like a play. And so I was picturing these two people. And again, thankfully, they said yes, to playing these roles, and trekked 2 hours to the beach with me, shot in the dark, and we got chased by a park ranger. Like, it was, I mean, so it was one of those things where thankfully they allowed my vision to do what it did. But So absolutely history played a role in that. One of the models of that one, he always comes up to me and says that was just an experience. It made him feel closer to his ancestor. Like he always talks about that. And then in all of my other projects, if I'm not influenced aesthetically by previous photographers and photographers' work, uh, Gordon Parks being one, Carrie Mae Weems being another, then there's always some type of historical um, reference in the literature that I want to make sure is accurate. So my last project, 401, um, I was portraying a character or who was supposed to be Sally Hemings. I wanted to put who was a slave, and I wanted to put chains in the scene, and Shayla Seabury, the author and my collaborator in that project, made sure that I knew. She was like, "Well, she wouldn't have had chains. She worked in the house." So we decided on a silver tea set instead to represent that. So it was still, so those little things, and I'm very big on symbolism. And again, if it's one image and I have to tell the whole story with this one image, I have to be very particular about everything that's placed in the scene. So it plays a big role. I always do research, and I would say this is probably the only project that isn't literature based. It was strictly in response to the call. And aesthetically, I pulled the aesthetic from there was there was an artist, and I think it's a contemporary artist, and it was in the show that I saw last year, um, that had some of that visual of the back of the head and just capturing hairstyles. But the large part of it was from a movie I saw. Um, there was a museum scene, and there were these huge canvases, and it was just like perfect. So this was the only project I would say that doesn't have a huge historical base.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. And my final question is,
Mhm.
um, it's just, would you like to share with us? Do you have a personal narrative in response to the Crown Act, in response to conformity or non-conformity, a narrative that can be witnessed or that can be that 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 was possibly witnessed or experienced by your, or lived or experienced?
Um, so the I think the one thing that I recall is that one traumatic hair event that I had. I think everyone has them all, and for me, it was around getting my hair straightened, getting a perm put in my hair. Um, it was the first time I'd ever had my hair permed. My mom, she straightened my hair, no problem, and it was this thing where my dad, for whatever reason, he wanted me to have straight hair. He wanted it. He was like, he was going to take me to get a perm. So I'd never had a perm before. And before you get one, you're not supposed to scratch your hair. You're not supposed to, really irritate your scalp. I had no idea my hair needed to be washed. So I had itched and scratched all up and through my scalp by the time I'd gotten to the salon. And it was a family member who had a salon in her garage who had been doing hair for years. She did everybody's hair in the neighborhood, but she had to be in her 60s, 70s, um, very stern. And she was the one that put the perm in my hair. And it was burning.
Hmm.
And I was telling her it was burning, but I had just got it put in and it wasn't taking yet. And so she needed to keep it in longer and it was burning and And she, because it was a family member and it was my first one, I was just being a baby and I had to just sit there and take it and deal with it. Well, that wasn't the case. It was in fact burning my scalp. And once she finished, um, washed my hair, burned the whole time, curled it. The next morning I woke up and my hair was hard. And it was because I had open wounds in my head that had leaked overnight and the pus had dried up in my hair. And no one really took, I just remember no one really being that concerned with the fact that I had open wounds in my hair. It was more concerned with, well, your hair still looks nice. You can't tell. Let's just comb out this top layer and deal with that when you get home from school. And so I had to go to school with that. Like, and it ended up having to have Neosporin put on my scalp. But it didn't matter because my hair still looked nice.
Hmm.
And so I always think about that and people. And after that, I think I did continue to get a perm. And whenever I could, I would wear my hair braided. And I felt so much more free and so much better with my hair in braids than in any other style. And people always ask why, why did I start locking my hair? I think it was just, I was at an age where it was the first time that I could make my own decision about my hair without my mom's input, because I had income to pay to get my hair done if I needed it done. Like, I was 19, so that was my chance to finally make my decision about my hair, and that's what I did. I decided to lock my hair, and it's been that way ever since. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. I am sorry that you experienced that, but I thank you for sharing that story with myself and with all of those who would view this story, and and those who have similar experiences. And for those people who don't know like what a perm is, like it's a chemical process, and what it relaxes your hair, and it's not like a perm to make your hair curly. It's like a perm to make your hair straight, the opposite. And it it can burn. It's a chemical process onto your scalp. And lady, I feel for you.
Yeah.
When you were telling a story, I was like, I was feeling the scabs because I've had them too.
Yep.
I was like,
Yep.
oh,
And it's
oh, oh.
and it's and the thing is my hair looked just as good as far as I was concerned without me having to be in so much pain to achieve that. And I think that was, for me, it was just my decision. And I think that my decision was to go natural partly because of that experience. But there are plenty of women who don't wear their hair natural and do what they want with their hair. And I mean, that's great. But I think it just should be a thing where to each his own, and there shouldn't be this expectation um, around natural hair of it, or around hair not being natural, as far as professionalism, the level of unkemptness. Yeah.
It speaks to like generations, right? It speaks to like the education of each generation, and the desire, like you said, your dad wanted you to go and get it. There's something that your dad perceived for you, like getting her hair straight will, I don't know what it was, but this perception that it's going to present you in a different way, and you were just content with having your
Mhm.
hair the way how it naturally was. But like these ideas, we talk about this, we've spoken about this with other artists, like this idea that not only will institutions put on us, but these ideas within our own culture that are put onto us, and how other people want to see us. And then you made that decision as soon as it's such a uniform decision for some, that as soon as they can provide, as soon as they can make those decisions to not conform to what others and how others see them, that freedom of saying, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this choice for myself, and that freedom to start questioning conformity, and then saying, okay, I'm going to non-conform by doing this. Uh I'm going to take in appreciate myself, and I'm going to invest in myself, and whichever way you see it, whether it's straightened or not, but just the ability to do so, to uplift yourself is so important.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Shannon, this has been uplifting. It has been
Yeah.
heartfelt. It has been informative. We are so excited at Delaware Contemporary to exhibit your work. I can't wait for for the show and for the viewing of your images. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you.